Before this video starts, if you enjoy this video, there are many more like it already on the channel with many more like it to come in the future, so subscribe. I'm trying to hit 125,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I would really appreciate it. I upload 6 days a week on this channel, so if you're looking for some consistent basketball talk, this is the place for it. Also, drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference. So 2 days ago, I did a video titled, "Can the Houston Rockets Upset the Los Angeles Lakers?" And that video did not age particularly well because no, they can't. They now see themselves in a 3-1 hole after a truly abysmal Game 4. I said in that video that they could simply not afford to lose this game and that this one was obviously a must win. And not only did they not win this game, they lost in a rather pathetic fashion. Now, they did make a late game comeback mostly because of Russell Westbrook. However, it was already the result was set. It was too little too late. And while there was a lack of trying and a lack of effort and a lack of a sense of urgency from a lot of players on this roster, really just excluding Russell Westbrook, the biggest culprit here was James Harden, who in this game was 2 for 11. Now, he did manage to get to the free throw line 19 goddamn times, and he did get 10 assists, and I don't think this performance was as bad as some people are making it out to be. It was certainly not a good look, to say the least, and today I wanted to talk about why this is a continual pattern with James Harden, why he routinely underperforms in the playoffs. And when you look at this game in particular, he really had that exposed because of how Los Angeles defended him. The reason that the Rockets were able to win Game 1 is because Los Angeles' defense really had not quite figured out how to defend Houston's offense quite yet. They were trying to bring double teams on James Harden, however, they were doing it in such an aggressive and reckless manner that they ended up chasing around three-point shooters on the perimeter for the entire goddamn game, and as a result, there was so many open shots for the Houston Rockets. But Game 2, they swung back in the other direction. They were more conservative with their double teams while also not letting up on Harden, and he got his points, but other factors like Russell Westbrook sucking affected that game. And then Game 3, Rondo brings in a 20 and 10 game out of nowhere and hits a bunch of three-pointers, so that brings in Game 3. And Game 4, the Lakers didn't play particularly well. It was just a couple of the role players like PJ Tucker, Robert Covington didn't really try, and they didn't have the effort, and that's why they lost the rebounding battle as badly as they did. But James Harden did not put this effort and did not play it like this was a must-win game, even though it was. And the reason why it is so deadly that the Los Angeles Lakers were able to figure out how to properly attack James Harden is because the Houston Rockets and James Harden don't make adjustments. And this is the flaw that we have talked about with Mike Budenholzer. I've heard the comment that Mike Budenholzer is essentially the Mike D'Antoni of the Eastern Conference, and that's honestly not all that flawed of an argument. While I have fully endorsed the Houston Rockets, and if I'm a jinx now, then my bad Rockets fans, but while I've made that endorsement and believe, and I still do believe in small ball, you have to put up the effort for that to work, and more importantly, even though I think small ball has a good foundation, there needs to be a little bit more depth to it than what the Houston Rockets were doing, because their offense is just so simplistic. James Harden or Russell Westbrook drives, bunch of shooters on the perimeter. James Harden's gonna hit like 5 step-back three-pointers on top of that as well. That's Houston's offense, and honestly, I don't think Mike D'Antoni has more written down than what I just said. And part of that's on Mike, but part of this is on James Harden, because really the reason that his offensive game is able to be keyed up on is because of how simplistic it is. Again, part of that because of D'Antoni, but when he's been presented opportunities to be able to create more offense for himself easily, he's not done great under those circumstances. Let's take this back to Chris Paul a year and 2 years ago. He did not like playing with Chris Paul all that much. That's part of the reason why he ended up being moved. Not just because they failed to beat the Warriors, but because there was some sort of conflict going on between CP3 and the Beard. And as a result, Paul got moved. As for what the conflict could be, James Harden fucking hates playing off ball. And I've given him the excuse because earlier in his career, he was a predominant, or not predominant, but pretty comfortable and pretty commonly used off ball player. However, Chris Paul comes here and he wants to dribble the ball all the time, and Harden becomes an off-ball player again after he was the lead guy for a couple of seasons, and he does not want to go back to that old self. The old self that was more effective and more difficult to defend in a playoff type situation. I have talked about off-ball movement on this channel to what I'm sure is a truly obnoxious extent to many people. Same for how much I talk about Jeremy Grant. However, I talk it into the ground because I'm right. or at least I feel that I am. I feel that off-ball movement is easily the most undervalued skill in basketball, and especially on offense, and it's part of the reason why Steph Curry is so deadly as a three-point shooter, is because he's both great on and off ball with his three-point shot. But my point is, it's a lot harder to defend somebody when they are both an on and off ball player at an elite level at both of those things. In the case of James Harden, he's not elite off of the ball. And when you look at their lineups when it's both Russell Westbrook and James Harden, it's really not great in the net rating because James Harden is dribbling the ball most of the time. And in this position, because James Harden's a lethal shooter and Russell Westbrook is far from a lethal shooter, clearly James Harden should be the one that's predominantly off ball in that pairing when they're both on the court at the same time. However, Russell Westbrook does not get the ball. The ball goes to James Harden, and then Russell Westbrook is meant to be a spot-up shooter, and then the Lakers are able to bring help in the paint because Russell Westbrook can't shoot worth shit. James Harden is predictable. Now, he is also probably one of the 5 best offensive talents the game of basketball has ever seen. And 95% of the time, that makes up for his predictability. It's been said a million times. The same statements are made about guys like Reggie Miller. We'll be like, you knew what Reggie Miller was going to do. Reggie Miller knew what he was going to do. Everyone in the arena knew what he was going to do. And he still did it, even if you had all the room in the world to anticipate it. That's kind of how it is with James Harden. And because he's just that guy, 95% of the time, it doesn't matter that everyone in the arena knows what he's going to do. But for that 5% of the time that it doesn't, that can really be crippling. And that 5% comes up in big moments, and he needs to eliminate that 5% in order for him to really make it to the next level and prove himself to be a championship lead option guy. Of course, I believe he can be. The problem is that 5%. He cannot get over that hill. Now, in terms of what is the future for the Houston Rockets and what is the future for James Harden, unfortunately, they don't have any choice but to run it back because no one's trading for Russell Westbrook, and you're not going to be trading James Harden unless James Harden asks for a trade, which I don't think he should do quite yet, because I think the small ball lineup, especially with a full season behind it and not just like 20 games, could be pretty damn great. But James Harden needs to start playing off ball. He also needs to start taking some more mid-range shots, or really any mid-range shots. I didn't really mention that, but that's a big part of it. A part of his predictability is that he only drives or takes threes, nowhere in the middle. But this team is going to have to run it back, and basically the only move that I would suggest is firing Mike D'Antoni. Now, people can be a little bit too trigger happy with firing coaches. I think people were talking about firing D'Antoni a little bit too early. However, I think this series has kind of proved itself that Mike D'Antoni does not make adjustments similar to Mike Budenholzer, and he limits his own offense to being very simple. If the Houston Rockets had stuff going off ball, not just for James Harden, but for everybody, and there was actual movement going on at the court at any time, then this offense would not be as easily stopped as the Lakers made it seem in Game 4, because they figured out the Rockets' offense, they figured out James Harden's offense, they kind of allowed Russell Westbrook to do what Russell Westbrook does on a good night. However, they need James Harden to be James Harden in order to win this series, and if the Lakers are going to let one of those two guys have a good game, it's going to be Russell Westbrook 9 times out of 9. Not playing off ball and just overall having this very simplistic offense has been what's held back James Harden for his entire career, outside of like 2018 when it's like, that guy should have won a championship, but the Warriors existed. Sorry, that's 2017. Yes. No, 2018. 2018, that's the year. My bad. Unscripted. If he fixes that and a new coach comes around and he fixes that, 1, Russell Westbrook would be more useful playing alongside James Harden, and 2, James Harden would be a lot less predictable, and I guarantee you'll see a lot less games like Game 4 versus the Lakers from there on out. But until that happens, James Harden is going to have that 5% hurdle that he just has not been getting over, and I don't anticipate him getting over it without a coach change to make that happen. Also, this may or may not be a video. It depends. The Chris Paul trade was a mistake. I feel like that's pretty obvious now, considering they gave up as many assets as they did with the future looking uncertain, on top of the fact that Chris Paul is a better player than Russell Westbrook. So that's a little sus. And yeah, I don't know. I might make a video about that. I might not. But regardless, that is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.